Good morning and welcome to our panel discussion, Bridging TV and Broadband, Strategic Relationships, Advertising, Technology, and Content. I'm Will Richmond, President of Broadband Directions, LLC, a market intelligence and consulting firm specializing in broadband delivered video. Before I introduce the panelists this morning and begin our discussion, I'm going to provide a few remarks to provide context for our discussion. By the way, we'll run about 50 to 55 minutes of moderated Q&A this morning, and then we'll open it up for audience Q&A. And if past panels are any indication, I'm sure there'll be no shortage of questions today. I'd like to start with a somewhat bold, although I believe not very controversial statement. And that is something that my firm and I have been telling clients for the past 3 years, which is today, broadband delivered video is the single most disruptive influence on the traditional video distribution value chain. And why is this the case? Because the open nature of broadband delivered video allows three things to happen. First, it allows existing video content providers, such as cable TV networks and broadcast networks, to go directly to their consumers, bypassing traditional distributors, namely cable operators and satellite operators. Evidence that this is happening abounds. The pace at which cable TV and broadcast networks are launching broadband channels and prioritizing broadband video is accelerating. In fact, a report that my firm released just last week showed that 99% of the top 75 cable TV networks, 74 out of 75, are now providing broadband video from their websites. And two big changes that this report showed from just a year earlier were that broadband video has transitioned for a lot of these networks from primarily a promotional tool to promote on-air programming to now being something that is viewed as a legitimate revenue-generating opportunity. In fact, 50 of the 74 networks that we looked at are now generating revenue from broadband. In addition, our survey of about 42 executives at these cable TV networks revealed that broadband video is now looked at as their #1 new business opportunity. The second disruptive influence of broadband video is that it allows new video market entrants to emerge, effectively cracking open the closed world of video distribution. These examples are all around us. There are obvious ones like YouTube and MySpace, but there are many others such as NewYorkTimes.com, IMG, CNET, Businessweek, Budweiser, Nike, and many others. The third disruptive influence on the existing video value chain is that new video distributors and aggregators are able to establish themselves as legitimate, viable competitors to current distributors such as cable operators and satellite operators. They are using their assets and skill sets that are well matched to the market's evolving expectations. While it's still early, these companies will over time become key competitors to traditional video distributors. And some examples of these emerging broadband-centric video distributors include Google, Yahoo, AOL, MSN, and Apple. Indeed, the evidence of broadband's disruption that is real and not theoretical is all around us. Consider, Comscore's recent report revealed that more than 106 million people in the US streamed or downloaded video during the month of July, 3 out of every 5 US internet users. And also according to Comscore, in July, MySpace alone generated 1.5 billion video views. Meanwhile, Apple recently announced it is now selling 1 million video downloads through iTunes each week. And for those that doubted broadband video's importance, one need look no further than Google's recent acquisition of YouTube for $1.65 billion, the most recent and certainly the most stunning evidence that broadband video has come of age. Yes, broadband video is red hot. But guess what? The most astounding thing about broadband video is that all of this growth has happened in essentially a parallel viewing environment, that of the PC. Think about it. Virtually all of the viewing of broadband video today happens on users' PCs. The number of people who have connected their PC to their TV and are actually consuming video on their broadband video on their TV as opposed to their PC, that number of people could probably fit in this conference room. Now stop and think about what happens to the broadband video market when there are mainstream consumer products bridging the PC and the TV, allowing people to watch broadband video in the comfort of their own TV rooms. So this is the logic that leads me to conclude that broadband video is indeed the single most disruptive influence on the traditional video distribution value chain, and why I also believe that despite all the amazing growth to date in the market, we're actually just in the first inning of broadband video's eventual growth and disruption. And on that note, I'd like to segue to today's panel, Bridging TV and Broadband, Strategic Relationships, Advertising, Technology, and Content. To help us make sense of the market and unravel what's in store in the future, we have a very distinguished panel today. I'm not going to give bios on each one of the speakers, but please take my word for it. They're all on the front lines of shaping broadband video's future. Please welcome Greg Fawcett, who's the VP of Business Development at IMG Media, a division of IMG, the world's premier sports, entertainment, and media company. IMG Media produces and distributes more than 10,000 hours of sports, documentary, drama, comedy, entertainment, popular factual, and children's content annually over multiple platforms across 200 countries, including award-winning television and radio programming. To Greg's left is Vivian Shelton, Senior VP and General Manager at NewYorkTimes.com, the website operation of the New York Times newspaper, which I don't think needs any further introduction. To Vivian's left is Robert Hayes, Senior Vice President and General Manager, Digital Media for Showtime Networks. To Robert's left is Michael Quigley. Michael is the Executive Director of Business Development for Turner Broadcasting System, the home of cable TV networks such as CNN, TNT, TBS, Court TV, and many others. To Michael's left is Rob Petty. Rob is the CEO of Roo. Roo is a global provider of digital media solutions and advertising technology that enables the activation, marketing, and distribution of digital media video over the internet and emerging broadcast platforms such as set-top boxes and mobile communication devices. And to Rob's left, finally, is Keith Kocho. Keith is the founder of Extend Media. Extend Media delivers digital content service infrastructure solutions that allow companies to swiftly provision, secure, package, and monetize digital content offerings. With those introductions, I'd like to turn the first question to Michael Quigley. So, Michael, your company, Turner Broadcasting, is certainly one of the most storied cable TV programming brands out there. The company was started by arguably the father of all cable programming, Ted Turner. If you would, tell us a little bit about how your company is approaching the challenges of capitalizing on the broadband video opportunity while also respecting existing distribution agreements with cable operators and satellite operators.
Clearly, I drew the short straw getting the first question. But at Turner, we look at the opportunity to work with our cable and satellite distribution partners in the broadband video space, much in the same way as we look at the opportunity to work with them in our traditional business. Think about our traditional business. We aggregate and produce content. We brand that content around networks and channels. And then we use those network and channel brands to drive usage and to drive adoption and ultimately to reinforce the value of our distribution partners' businesses. And in much the same way on the broadband video side, we see opportunities to leverage the products that we create and the brands that we have, whether it's CNN.com, whether it is Cartoon Network and Adult Swim and their new media efforts, whether it's Turner Sports and their digital media efforts. We see the opportunity to use those brands and those products to be able to reinforce the businesses that our distributors are building in the high-speed access business today. And so if you are a subscriber to Comcast and have Comcast high-speed service or Time Warner Cable high-speed service or others, you'll look and see that there is a good collection of Turner-branded content that's made available within those portals. And we always try to, with our distribution partners, work as we work with any other partner, in that we want to make sure that our brands are protected and presented in a way that makes sense to us and preserves our brand's image and integrity. We want to have a business model that works for us and works for our partners. We want to make sure that our copyright is protected in a way that makes us comfortable and assures us that it won't be used in any unlicensed or illegitimate way. And the great thing about our traditional distribution partners is they understand that, having worked with us for many years, and are always willing to work with us on those terms. And we also look forward to being able to take those same terms and conditions, be able to take those same attitudes and extend them to other areas and avenues for new media distribution as well.
Well, let me just ask you a key question that I'm not sure I heard out of that answer, which is, are you actually making money by distributing your video with those traditional cable operators? And if so or if not, how do those compare with other revenue-generating activities that you're pursuing online?
With our traditional operators, we do make money. We have a variety of different business models that we undertake with them, whether it's licensing them content for license fees, whether it's providing them content and having an ad revenue-generating arrangement where revenue is shared between the parties. We're also doing some interesting things with them in terms of traffic generation from their portals and from their presence to some of our websites as well. And from a business model standpoint, from a profitability standpoint, the terms that we have with them are very similar to the terms that we take out to other partners too. So there really isn't a disparity in terms of the economics to us in working with Comcast or Time Warner versus the other partners that we work with in the broadband video arena.
Okay. Rob Hayes, can we come back to you into this discussion?
Yeah, I was going to add to that because it was a great kind of recap as far as how Showtime Networks also approaching with the refer to our affiliates. And the only thing I'd add to that is just that for us, we also use it as a great subscriber acquisition tool because we are a subscription network. So we partner with our affiliates, give them content, and actually give them full-length episodes and shows too, which we use as a sampling opportunity for people to see what kind of programming we have available out there and drive subscription back to the network. So in addition to all the business models that you just mentioned, we also use it as a subscriber acquisition tool, which has been very effective for Showtime Networks.
And is there any tension that's currently exists in those relationships with cable operators, satellite operators, as the world of video has expanded and there have been so many more new players involved, both from a content perspective and also from a distribution perspective? Give us a sense of sort of what the state of relationships are right now, outside of the tension that was already being created around programming fee issues and so forth. But what's sort of the state of affairs? And Michael, can you comment on that?
Well, I think it's a couple of things. I think first, we think it's important as a company, and certainly our partners agree that product differentiation is important. We just don't believe that providing the on-air product, the linear video product that we put on air on our networks every day and streaming that over IP through a portal to end users is a great user experience. And I think our distribution partners agree with that, and as well, they have concerns that if we did that in a widespread way, it would affect their business model for their traditional business. I think the other thing, too, that we think about is also from a video distribution standpoint, how we can, as you mentioned before, how we can work with them to help drive on-air promotion, how we can work with them to help drive on-air presence of our programs, on-air awareness of our programs. And to the extent we're doing things with other partners that they perceive to be of value, they want to participate in that as well. So we try as best we can to not go down the path of let's have an exclusive arrangement with Google or have an exclusive arrangement with Yahoo or do something exclusively with AOL and not make that same kind of opportunity available to our cable affiliates as well.
Okay. Keith, let me bring you into the conversation. Your company is working with Cablevision and also with other large operators. What are you hearing from cable operators in terms of how they view this emerging broadband video distribution landscape and how they plan to retain value in what they're providing to their subscribers and also in how they work with existing cable brand programs?
Sure. I think the central issue around all of this, obviously, which the two gentlemen have been talking about, is rights and the availability of those rights and the opportunity for if a cable operator or a telecom provider wants to add not just IPTV broadcast services, but what would be characterized these days as over-the-top or broadband direct download services. We certainly had spent a great deal of time with some of our customers, Cablevision included, watching them try to navigate what they can acquire, particularly because of some of the cannibalization issues that occur. That said, I think that there is a whole-scale belief in the not-too-distant future that the vast majority of these services will move to IP delivery, multiplicity of devices, that it's inherently complicated technically as much as it is to understand what the value proposition for the consumer is. But they're certainly moving in that direction, some more quickly than others.
Yeah, and is there concern that you hear or that you can reflect here today in terms of, you know, what the value proposition is going to be of the traditional set-top box-driven video environment when video is moving into an IP environment, like you said?
Yeah, I mean, increasingly, most of the set-tops that are out there these days, at least the ones that have been released in the last few years, have a fair amount of horsepower in them anyway. The difference between what they are and a computer, for the most part, is pretty small. The nature of it, and then this stuff, first of all, I should apologize to the audience and to my fellow panelists. I wrecked my neck last night. I think it was something to do with trying to pay attention to the number of conversations or important people I might be missing in a digital Hollywood conversation. And so I can't really turn it, and I've tried to take some, sort of modest narcotics to help with the thing. So if I start
I know where to go for my controversial remarks now.
I'm often reverent. Yeah, it might just get worse. Anyway.
That's called plausible deniability.
There you go. So, I mean, if you look at the announcement that Apple made not too long ago about their ITV platform, which I'm curious to see if they're going to change the brand of that before they launch it.
Let's hope so.
There's a pretty great example of an on-demand delivery mechanism to the television. And I was starting to say that, the lexicon these days is a little different than it was the last convergence cycle. We now refer to these things, and for those of you who've probably heard this, the 10-foot experience being the television one, the 2-foot experience being broadband, and of course mobile being the 1-foot experience. And so, I think there's very little question that we'll see just blurring amongst these things. Clearly what Microsoft's trying to do with Vista, it'll be the first OS that's bundled with a media center experience in it, and the notion of being able to support easily connecting the large screen experience to your computer should get easier for most people. And we're obviously all hoping that Apple does their usual great job of packaging and promoting that experience to really blow this market out, so that we'll see increasingly very little difference. From a consumer's perspective, they really shouldn't care where the video is actually coming from a technical perspective, but that we consistently move the bar of the experience for them, giving them more flexible options to consume media and have more control over that experience.
But the reality is that cable operators and satellite operators care where individuals get their video, right? Because they're relying on those people to pay them anywhere between $60, $70, $100 or more per month. So to the extent that they're grabbing video for quote-unquote free off of the web from YouTube, MySpace, NewYorkTimes.com, et cetera, that's a real issue, is it not?
Yeah, and that sort of conflict in the channel, I think, again, the rights holders here on the panel can speak to better than I, but technically speaking, I think, what the service provider community that we deal with tries to suggest, and I think quite well, is that, what you're going to get if you participate in a commercial service on their network, there's certain things they can do with quality of service and delivery experience on their network that you can't achieve over the public internet today, and maybe that stays the same for the foreseeable future. So they can certainly market their service that way and will continue to. Where I was really going is, I think we'll see a progression of them moving their services to delivery over IP, still maintaining the same sorts of commercial models, probably introducing new ones in addition to the subscription basis they have today into on-demand delivery to other devices within the home. And then, we've had conversations with many of them that are also looking at exposing lower-level interfaces to people who want to deliver services into the home. So, you could go to a network operator and say, look, we'd like to deliver all over your network, reach a bunch of different devices with a commercial service. And they'll expose abilities for you to do that. I don't think they're fighting it really at all. It's probably just more of a progression of how long does it take before these services start to be delivered over an IP channel as opposed to the way they're being done.
Rob Petty, let's bring you into the conversation. Your company is in the business of aggregating a lot of different content brands, web-only brands, right? You're driving a lot of consumer usage of video. Where do you come out on this issue of whether consumers are going to start biasing in favor of video that they can grab for quote-unquote free over broadband versus paying their 60-odd or more dollars per month to their cable or satellite operator?
I think if you look out a year or two, our view is that there will be a device, and it's coming very, very quickly, and whether it's the Apple device or something Microsoft introduces that will give the ability to the users to, why you open with it, maybe this room is the amount of people that are actually watching it through the TV. we think that there's going to be a mass adoption of some form of a device within the next 12 months. It'll be similar to the iPod. Nobody had one and everybody had one. We haven't got the conflicts that a lot of these guys have got, where they've got subscription revenues and different markets that they've got to protect. We believe that the first thing is that you need to realise is it's a global market overnight. The second thing is that the viewing experience, despite it, the problem is that it's on a computer screen at the moment, but when you go back to it, the essence of it, it's watch what you want, when you want, on what device you want. But the viewing experience on the internet at the moment allows you to search for videos. Virtually everything there is on demand. So it's meeting all those requirements of the users. We've just got to move that to the TV. But our attitude at the moment is that there's going to be a device introduced that will give us access to the TV. And to any content provider that we were talking to, I'd be saying start digitising your content and getting it ready for this. Do not hesitate. I think we've seen boundaries being broken with the major networks, where many of them have been running their latest release shows on TV and then making them available immediately on the web. I think all the walled gardens and the difficulties and rights issues and protecting the subscribers that you guys need to walk through, those barriers need to be broken down really, really quickly, or it will allow a lot of new companies, and whether that's we're banned from saying it for the YouTube or ourselves, like we've come from nowhere and are doing, we're top 10 streamer in the world now. But companies like ourselves to get in and capture market share very, very quickly, or the Googles or the Yahoos, or these companies can take away market share very, very quickly to where in the end the cable providers and the Comcast of the world might be just commodity bandwidth suppliers in the end.
So let's take your statement that over the next 12 months, there will be mass adoption, and we should talk about what mass adoption actually means. But let's assume that there is heavy penetration of these type of Apple ITV bridge devices. Does that position RU as the next Comcast?
What our little job is to provide the websites or our web affiliates with the tools to do all of that. And whether that's the technology, the content, the advertising, whatever they need to do it. So what we're seeing at the moment is around the world it's all the TV broadcasters and content guys looking to get activated, but you've got newspapers want to become TV stations, magazines want to become TV stations, high traffic websites, that all of a sudden you've got all this competition. What's strange to me, I've lived in the US despite the accent for the last 7 years and live in New York and everything, but what amazes me in the media market in the US is how they are not realising the overseas competition that's going to have access to this market. That, especially in the areas of sport and these sort of areas, that these guys are going to be able to launch these sporting portals or video online that you can watch either through your computer, TV or mobile phone, but they can launch it out of Italy, they can launch it out of Hong Kong, they can launch it out of Europe. But protecting the market share in this particular market, I think, is almost naive, where the big media companies in the US should be trying to capture as much market share overseas as possible, because it's going to be a global market. It's going to be happening very, very quickly.
Let me ask you one more question, and I want to bring Vivian and Greg into the discussion as well. But when you stop and think about what the attributes have been historically for a traditional video distributor, cable operator, satellite operator, you think in terms of winning franchise agreements with cities and towns, being able to run your wires all over those cities and towns, raising enormous amounts of capital to be able to both build and maintain those networks, right? And then to be able to contract with companies like TBS, Showtime, et cetera, to be able to fill up those pipes with different programming packages. Rob, what do you see as sort of the key success factors for the next generation of video distributors, such as RU, to kind of emerge as successful in a broadband-centric environment? What are the kind of key attributes?
I think we focus on probably the four fundamentals, getting as much distribution as we can, and that's worldwide. And our model is that we'll power newspaper websites, or we work very, very closely with Verizon, and they've got some great initiatives happening. But our job is to work with them, so build distribution, and that's globally, not just here, as much as we can. Have licensing as much content as we can, building the largest database, the relationships with the advertisers, having those relationships, and the heart of all this is, it's unfortunate, but the heart of all this is the technology to do all of this is not easy. To control it, to control the media, where it's going, what sites it's going on to, setting up all the features for the users so they can search for videos, so they can build playlists and all that sort of thing is hard. But we focus on those 4 areas. We've been focusing on it for 5 years. We just see it as a new broadcasting platform. The opportunity for us is we don't need to lay the wires down. We don't need to go through too many government regulations. We just need to capture as much market share as possible as quickly as we can.
Right. Let's bring Vivian and Greg into the discussion. So one of the things that I said at the beginning was that one of the big disruptive potential influences of broadband is that it allows new market entrants to come into the market. Certainly YouTube, MySpace, these are kind of headline companies that all of us are aware of, but in the meantime, companies like New York Times, traditionally a newspaper company, nothing at all to do with video, correct me if I'm wrong, has now emerged as a pretty big video supplier on its own website through other deals. Tell us, Vivian, a little bit about sort of how you guys look at the broadband video opportunity to impact the overall company and where you're going from here.
I will, but before I do that, having recently worked for a company that has a bunch of cable channels, but not being beholden to it right now, I can speak very freely about
Excellent.
this conflict. So
We like
I'm not going to have the PR people yelling at me for saying. I think there is a huge tension, and that is going to have to come to a head pretty quickly because the cable networks are, of course, entirely beholden. Well, not entirely. You've got advertising revenue stream, your distribution revenue stream, beholden to the cable operators. And there is a great deal of sensitivity, not to mention contractual issues, with pissing them off by streaming video. And yes, the user experience watching a program streamed over the internet is not ideal right now, but I find it very ironic, this is the one case, having been in cable for many, many years, that this is where the broadcast networks are way ahead of cable. They're already streaming shows in their entirety. I understand it's a different business model. And it's what consumers are demanding. And consumers are demanding it now. And once these devices, whether it's in 12 months or 3 years, once there's mass adoption of being able to connect those through whatever device wins to your television, there's no way that subscription model is going to sustain. Consumer demand will cause it to crumble. So I think it's going to be a very interesting thing to watch. We have a different set of challenges at the New York Times. And yes, we have, interestingly enough, as an old-fashioned newspaper company, actually, video has been very, very good for us. And it's been good for us because we have been able to create a differentiated video content. And the fact that we are not, when I first started to think about creating, because I come from cable news, and now going into a newspaper site and thinking about creating original content based on reporting, but without the resources of a worldwide news gathering organization. At first I thought, boy, how are we going to pull this off? We don't have crews we don't have electronic bureaus all over the world. How are we going to do it? That's turned out to be an asset because although I'm not criticizing the cable networks, they do a splendid job, and I watch the cable networks all the time. In terms of translating that to an online experience, it's not particularly satisfying. It either becomes very commoditized, or the translation from the big screen to the small screen doesn't exactly materialize. And as we began to think about creating content for the New York Times website, I actually had to find myself purposefully unlearning everything I knew about creating good television. Things like, in television, you don't want talking heads. Talking heads work fabulous for us. You know, the production value and the quality of the image. Guess what? On the web, that doesn't matter. Snazzy graphic, quick cuts, that's a disaster online. The one thing that does hold true, of course, is storytelling and personalities. Those two things matter, whether it's in television or in video. But that is where we've had a lot of success. We tell great stories. We like to think we tell our users, our viewers online are telling us we tell good stories by virtue of the fact that they're coming to our site. We've been able to establish franchises around certain personalities like David Pogue in technology and Tony Scott with his movie minutes. And our brand has really helped us. I'd like to, can I bring up one other issue though that's sort of related, coming out of the flow of this too? I think in terms of what is going to matter going forward, in terms of we're saying where is video going to go, there's one thing that hasn't come up yet that I think for us, if I look at the way people come to the New York Times, no matter what kind of media it is, whether it's video or text, they basically come to us via one of two routes. Either they love the brand and they come to us through the homepage because they care about what the New York Times has to say, or they come to us through search. And more, our acceleration of our unique users through SEO optimization has brought in millions and millions and millions of people who would never know to find us. And I think we would be remiss in this panel if we didn't talk about how critical search is going to be, proper search in broadband video going forward.
Right, I agree, and we will get that.
Okay, good.
I promise. And thank you for being controversial.
Okay.
Greg, let me sort of throw the last one to you, make sure we bring you into the conversation. You know, IMG is a very complicated company, and it would probably be helpful if you just spent a minute orienting all of us about, you know, where you fit into IMG, where IMG fits into all this. But also, tell us a little bit about, again, as Vivian did, sort of what does broadband video mean for you guys in terms of, you know, your business opportunities and where you're taking the company from here?
Sure. So IMG is, for the most part, known as an athlete representation business. We represent Tiger, Federer, Sharapova, most of the top golf and tennis players. What a lot of folks don't know is that we also have a media business, which is known as IMG Media now, was formerly known as TWI. And it's the largest independent producer of sports content in the world, but television programming. So, you know, that's certainly our focus, and, you know, our eyes are on the broadband space, at least initially, because, you know, it's a new distribution channel, and therefore a new revenue stream. But we've traditionally been in the business of licensing our content, you know, and we want to be in the business of building nets, and being a big part of distribution. So, you know, we're getting acclimated to what those business models are and seeing what properties we can build. IMG manages all the major Fashion Week properties in the U.S. So we do video programming around those Fashion Week properties. We've distributed it through MSN, and for the last 2 seasons, for the spring and the fall, we did about 3 million streams through MSN Video for each show. So it's certainly an attractive opportunity. Can we build that into something that's a full net? Is there an opportunity there? You know, that's certainly up for debate. We're building brands in other areas. We're partnering with the Laugh Factory to build a comedy brand. So you know, we're experimenting, one, to extend, you know, the licensing model, and two, to build media properties.
Great, thanks. So let's see if we can kind of open up the dialogue a little bit among the group here. Michael and Rob Hayes, I heard Vivian.
Sorry.
What I
Turn up a little.
It is a huge issue.
Right.
And there's a lot of time, anytime we want to do anything new or innovative in this space, the amount of hours that have to be spent talking about how this impacts the company, from all the issues that Vivian outlined, contractual relationships, all of that stuff. It's a huge issue. The way we've been approaching it right now is we're doing everything non-exclusive, and that's helped a lot. It helped us to go out there, because if we're going to do anything out there, we're doing it with our affiliates as well as we're doing it with our partners. And that has definitely helped us kind of get out there. We're looking at this space really, you know, we have conversations internally, you know, is it short term, long term? Well, long term, I think, you know, who's going to, really, we're punting on the long term. We're looking at short term for, you know, 12 to 24-month time period. And our approach is to really try to test all these platforms, do short-term deals and relationships with all the players, and try to learn as much as possible during this time period. And as long as our approach has been on a non-exclusive basis, that's helped us to kind of be able to do what we want to do, and also play with the operators and offer them the same terms and conditions. And it's been very effective for us to be able to do a lot of what we do.
I'll take the flip side of the controversy. I think that Vivian's other point about the importance of search is an often overlooked aspect of all this. And if you kind of go back and look at the cable business, when cable transitioned from analog to digital, you went from, I got 20 or 30 channel choices to I have 120. The importance of the program guide shot up dramatically, and it became the most used and utilized feature on digital cable. So you apply that to the broadband video world, where the threshold for entry is incredibly low. Right? Anyone can be their own broadcaster. Anyone can upload video at any point in time and become their own video provider.
Not quite that easy.
Well, it is. I mean, there are individuals who are independently producing video and making money today. They're not making huge sums of money, but they're making money today. So in a world where there are lots and lots of video options, lots and lots of video out there, lots and lots of channels and points where you can get access to video as a consumer. The question becomes, as a consumer, how do you navigate all of that? And we've done a lot of looking at Turner at the video search marketplace, and quite honestly, I think that so far we have found the solutions to be, not all that great.
Was search the answer, or is an EPG the answer? Because search certainly wasn't the answer for Google and video.
Well, I think that what I heard was that there are two ways that people find. One is they know a brand and they go to that brand. They basically kind of browse and find on their own. The other is that they're searching through to find content that's of interest to them. I think that having a brand is an important thing because you want to have people who say, I think about news, I think about the New York Times, or I think about CNN, so let me just go there. And you want to have at the same time for the person who's saying, I know that there's a story about Mark Foley, let me just see who's got something on it today. You want to make sure that there's an easy way for them to, when they're looking for information about Mark Foley and the story today, that they get the video that they're expecting to get. And right now, that process it's incredibly broken. You're right, the Google experience has been terrible. And there are things that are out there I think are not giving consumers from a video search standpoint what they're looking for. But I think it's a huge issue to be tackled. And today, the way it gets done, which is, as a user, you kind of come to the home page of a site, you see the video that's on the home page, you kind of scroll your way through that. Hopefully something there catches your eye, and that kind of brings you deeper into it, but to the extent it doesn't, you leave and go somewhere else. It's just not a great way for it to get done.
Well, goes one line. But one thing that we've noticed that's been a bit of a surprise is we work with a lot of the major brands. We work with Fox News and the APs and Reuters and that in the news area. But what's been interesting is when it's put in an environment where watch what you want, when you want, and whether it's fashion or whatever, the big names don't necessarily get the demand. It's the best content wins. So all of a sudden, because to an extent the cable is a bit of a walled garden where people are restricted, but it's the best content that wins when they're put into that environment. It's not necessarily the brands.
How do you find the best content when there are 10,000 options?
Yeah, I would disagree with that too, because I just know we have a lot of content that we push out on a regular basis, and when you search for it on a video search, even within some of the large portals, their search results are not, the best in a sense. It's based on, they say it's based on ranking and traffic, and it's still a little bit messy.
I mean, I want to bring it back a little bit to the operator question you asked me earlier, not because I'm just principally comfortable there, but there's some relevance associated with it. In that we're at such an early stage in this space, and where there's money being made, the nascent business models, everyone used the term experimentation, I think, and pilots and what have you, and we to defend the operator service provider community, running these businesses is monstrously complex when you start generating revenue from them. Consumers then have expectations of quality of service and billing and customer support. And the services that we've been engaged in where you go beyond the first wave of just streaming video with ad support in it into something which starts to realize the promise of other devices and mobility and that sort of value proposition, it's monstrously complicated. The support costs are huge for early entrants into this space. Those are the sorts of investments that people who are in the subscription video business today have invested in for years. And we shouldn't discount the complexity of trying to support the consumer's appetite for these services and the complexity that they will introduce into the marketplace. It's very early. I'm trying to get somewhere between the simplicity and complexity of this space. It's no question people can throw video up on the internet. Maybe I'll go do it later with my neck problem. But to turn that into a real revenue generating business that really has to support multiple revenue generating models, whether they be subscription, download, ad-based, et cetera, is a complicated business and a large scale undertaking. You can't just turn it on overnight and run with it.
Right. So when you think about those types of attributes to be a successful video distributor, who comes to mind for you as potentially being well positioned to succeed at it in a broadband environment?
Well, I mean,
Is it Google? Is it Yahoo? Is it none of those guys? Is it Comcast? Is it Roo? Is it,
Well, I think the issue that we're getting into on the search side of what defines the user experience, how people find things, one issue with the on-demand marketplace that's always been a problem from a programmer standpoint, and I mean content-wise, is marketing. There's huge marketing budgets that sit behind what people in the content creation and broadcast marketplace do today, which is, let's face it, that's where all the money still is. And how does that model translate into this world where everyone's hunting and pecking around trying to find a little piece of content where someone ran over their cat or whatever the stuff happens to be? that transition certainly hasn't happened yet, and we haven't seen some of the larger players enter this space, although they're starting to, and what we will see hopefully will be a hybrid of those models. But I think what will probably happen downstream is less of an issue of everybody who owns rights suddenly becomes a full-scale service provider, and everyone who's a service provider becomes a dumb pipe. Most likely we'll see a lot of jockeying for position in the short term, which will result in different deals being negotiated. I think it's unlikely that most people who are in the content space, and the folks who are on here can feel free to disagree, that they're going to go off and invest in call centers and all kinds of things to support users in the end community. That's a huge undertaking that basically, at a very high level, you could say that what the rights holder community would really love to see here is that they know marketing really well. They understand their brand. I don't think anybody on this panel would disagree that they don't think their brands have been necessarily given the value and ability that they could see, that the operator community doesn't do that necessarily well. They do other things extremely well. So maybe what this technology introduces is new forms of licensing agreements, different flexibility for consumers, and a plethora of new experiences for people, as opposed to just whole-scale sea change where everyone's just, hey, I could go do this on my own. I mean, there's very few, Disney's probably a good example where they, as a studio, they actually have brand equity through the end consumer. But again, going direct to in a retail channel to try to sell stuff to customers is, they got out of the retail business relatively recently, as memory serves. So it's hard business to sort of figure out. Anyway.
Let's get back to talking about content specifically, because what I heard Vivian say was that she's had to unlearn a lot of previous behaviors developed in the traditional cable TV world. What I heard Rob Petty say was that great content often is found and beats out in terms of number of views content from well-branded sources, what he's found in his experience. One can think about this concept of the long tail, and when you think about cable networks who 30 years ago came in and started encroaching on the territory of broadcast networks, in a sense what they were doing was kind of creating the middle part of the tail, or the early part of the long tail, by slicing off niches, being more edgy, being more provocative, and basically finding audiences smaller than broadcast networks, but still finding audiences over these past 30 years. It seems to me that now what's happening with all this user-generated content or semi-professional generated content, whatever you call it, is that these new content providers are in a sense serving or trying to serve long-tail medicine to cable networks, right? What they're basically trying to say is, we can essentially outdo cable by being more provocative, by being more in touch with users, by being more edgy, by being more relevant, et cetera. And as a result, we see the enormous activity at sites like YouTube, Google, MySpace, et cetera. So tell us a little bit, maybe, again, sort of bring it back to Michael and to Rob. What are the challenges that you guys are facing on the programming side? Never mind, distribution relationships, but on the pure programming side to kind of address what Vivian was saying about kind of unlearning previous programming behaviors and staying relevant and competitive with new video formats that are clearly finding an audience. And don't answer all at once.
It was mentioned earlier on the panel, I think you mentioned rights. There's a huge issue regarding rights, and I think that in this space, now that we've been very active in the broadband video space for 4 years at least, we've kind of conquered that. But that's a huge issue, and it is trying to find a certain sensibility and skill set in developing this content. Sure. In developing this content that works on these platforms. I mean, the traditional editors that we have in-house that are used to creating very expensive interstitial elements don't necessarily work well on the broadband platform. And so we are looking at alternative ways of actually producing that. And it's, it's a traditional media company, so trying to approach that and turn it around, it takes a little bit of time, but we've had a lot of success in that area in a very short period of time, because what we had to prove internally is that the exposure that we're getting for our shows on broadband are huge compared to what we can get through the traditional media outlets right now. And we can target it, and we can create content for certain audiences that we know are going to pick up on this and create a lot of buzz. We can also create, we can go out a lot earlier than we used to with our budgets, so we can start earlier, start to create demand for new shows that are coming out, and really kind of create a campaign which costs us a lot less than what we would have done through the traditional media. And good example of that with the show out now, Dexter, but that was very successful, how we kind of started out very early on with video, pushing it out, created it in a much different way than we have approached it in the past, and it's been very successful for us. But it takes time. It takes time with everything to do.
Yeah, I'd say a few things. I think first, from a rights perspective, we're kind of in this unique position of being both, in some cases, content producer, and in some case, licensing the rights for content to air on our networks. And so, one of the challenges that we find now is that we're kind of in a situation that we didn't anticipate, which is we're airing shows on air that have tremendous following, but we may not have the rights to exploit those shows in other platforms. And so having to go back in some cases and try to negotiate those rights and access to those rights, or in advance when we're thinking about new show development, being sure that we secure those rights in that process, has become something that we just didn't anticipate a few years earlier. I think from a production standpoint, we've also found that trying to take our traditional television production folks and say, okay, do this new media thing, just hasn't really worked very effectively.
Why is that?
I think because the skill set and the expertise that's required needs full-time focus. Mm-hmm. And when you're 95% of your time doing television production and then on the side doing some interstitial stuff, it doesn't get your full-time attention and focus. And you don't really think about, is this working or is it not working? Right. And so we really had to set up these new media production areas and new media production departments from a product standpoint to strictly focus on, at CNN and at TBS and at TNT and at Cartoon Network and Adult Swim, you just focus on new media production, you just focus on broadband video production, so that you can gain the expertise and understanding of what works in this environment and what doesn't. And still, that said, this question of what's the best, as successful as we have been in traditional areas, we're constantly surprised by what it is that users gravitate toward, what they gravitate to online, what they don't. I think that the great thing about the creative process and the content production process is that an individual producer can maybe come up with one funny hit, but what differentiates the successful producers in the journalism area or in television or in film or in music is to be able to do that consistently. And so we're, like everyone else, doing a lot of testing and trialing and trying to figure out what works and what doesn't. But for all the experience and expertise that we think we gain, we still are shocked when we see that two guys singing karaoke generates millions and millions of views. I mean, right. Those are just the kinds of things we don't expect.
But let's boil down what that shock actually means to a company like TBS, right? Your core competency is programming. Right? The core competency of the network is figuring out what type of programming to develop and then deliver that to audiences. If, to your point, you're shocked at what indeed audiences are interested in and how two guys making a karaoke video can in effect be competitive with the best professional video that's being developed at TBS, TNT, Core TV, etc. What does that say going forward about what the brand of TBS is actually going to mean, what you guys are going to focus on, and how you'll succeed?
I think we're less concerned that two guys can create a karaoke video that can generate a whole lot of views. I think we're more concerned about making sure that what we do with TBS in the broadband video arena, the very funny brand that we've created, extends to that arena as well. So that when a user looks at TBS and looks at two guys in their basement, those two guys in their basement may do something once or twice that's extraordinarily funny, but hopefully when they look at TBS, they don't say, well, hopefully I'll find one or two things that are funny. Hopefully they'll say, I'll find lots of things that are funny and keep me consistently engaged so that the brand promise, TBS is going to be a place where you're going to find funny content, will be reinforced on a consistent and regular basis and not be, today I found something interesting, but tomorrow I didn't.
Can I jump in on this too? Yeah, I think it's less about, oh my God, what are we going to do because we create all this very precious little jewels of content and somebody go on YouTube and find something that's created by a user. You can't look at it that way. You have to start with what is it? It's all about what your brand represents and the kind of audience that you're trying to aggregate at your site. So at the New York Times, obviously, we hold ourselves to very high journalistic standards. But even in the case of video, one might think, oh, well, the New York Times, everything has to be perfectly crafted and perfectly vetted. We will never have user-generated video content there. Well, wrong, because we consider ourselves on our site a place where people who are engaged and interested and curious would like to gather. And it may be that they'll gather to see a very finely crafted, piece that's a piece of investigative journalism created by reporters. But I will tell you right now, where we're going to begin to dabble in, we are already in user-generated content because we want, and admittedly, we're starting it in safe areas. For example, we're starting it in our vows section, where for those of you that read the New York Times on Sunday, it's sort of considered, there's all those little there's the wedding section, which is very, very popular. People love to read all the stories from the couples that are getting married. So we're asking those couples to submit their own videos, and we'll put those on our site because people are coming there to see what people that come to the New York Times want to see, and they'll be able to comment on it, and they'll be able to rate it, and they'll be able to review it. And it doesn't matter whether we create it or someone else creates it. It meets our certain brand promise, it meets our standard, and it's what our audience is coming to the New York Times for, just as an example. So I think it's less about who generates it and who produces it. The other thing I want to say is, if I can just say one other thing, which is aside in terms of the differences between creating content for cable television and creating content for the internet, aside from the editorial and the production value issues that we've been all discussing and I think largely agreeing on, there's also a business model question, which is cable companies, generally speaking, and this is beginning to change, don't have a cost structure set up to be able to produce the kind of scale of videos for the web that will allow you to make money. You go bankrupt if you produce a 3-minute segment for the web at the budgets that most cable companies, including the cable company I've worked on, produce 3-minute interstitials for television. So there's a huge economic factor in here as well.
You've got to think about the advertisers too, because that's
True.
they're often paying for the content, of the production.
I was going to say, I think the model that is interesting, how many of you have not seen Current TV? Well, you all have. Oh, well, you should if you haven't, because it's really a good example of what's probably going to happen here, which is the marrying of user-generated content with high-grade commercial stuff packaged and sold in a channel. It's I flipped it on for the first time a little while ago and was just very impressed with what they've done. And admittedly, for the audience thereafter, the way they package their programming, it's quite successful. But there's no reason that model shouldn't work in every genre.
And that sounds
around the economies of scale issue. It brings your audience back, refreshes their content, focuses on community. You can extend it into the broadband multi-device space quite well.
And that Current TV model, I think, is somewhat close or analogous, Vivian, to what you're saying.
Exactly.
But, I think as Rob was just starting to raise, when you think about the New York Times brand promise, not just to its readers and to its audience, but also to its advertisers, what are the challenges to go to, Tiffany or Neiman Marcus or, whoever, some of the real prestige brands that advertise, as you know, very heavily in the New York Times and on the website, and go to them and say, hey, guess what? Now we're going to have some UGC content running, and guess what? That's not going to necessarily be at the same level, to your point, of perfection and so forth. Does that raise new issues in terms of preserving those relationships and kind of bringing them through?
It depends what you mean when you say the same level. I mean, there is nothing that will ever appear on our website that we haven't vetted. So it's not going to be a free-for-all. I mean, we're not going to create sort of a YouTube on nytimes.com. So our promise to our advertisers is always going to be a certain level, a certain standard and a certain level of integrity, if you will, that we promise our advertisers. And that, is that a hindrance to massive scale? Maybe, but that's something that is so critically associated and important to our brand that's we will never compromise there, even to scale massively. So, and our advertisers, we like to think, trust us in that regard.
Right. So that sounds like that's a fail-safe point for the way you guys are looking at content, is that you want to be able to kind of bring in new forms of content, but at the same time you want to make sure that nothing ever crosses the line where it would offend or put off.
No, never. Everything will be edited, including our user-generated content. Absolutely.
Okay. Let's we're going to go just a few more minutes for questions, and then we'll open it up to the audience. Sorry. But at the beginning, we talked a little bit about this concept of convergence between the broadband video world that's really experienced all this growth over the past year and a half, and the traditional TV world. People sitting in their living rooms and watching TV until their heart's content. Rob Petty, you made a comment earlier about massive adoption in 2007. let's just understand a little bit, maybe from all the panelists, how this convergence may unfold. When you look at 07, Rob, how do you think of whether it's the Apple, ITV box that probably renamed, et cetera, when it launches, other devices, Xbox, media centers, other digital media adapters that are out there. What does 07 look like from your standpoint in terms of, let's say baseline? What percentage of broadband homes will have a device in their home that will allow them to easily consume broadband video on their TV?
Can I just go, I just want to take a step back, and the reason why people will want to use the device is I think the first thing is that the quality's there now. It's just got there now, where most houses, whether it's DSL or cable, can handle what's called a 700K stream, which is acceptable on a plasma or LCD. So we've got the quality encoding, delivering over the internet to the masses, we've got that bit right. The reason I think they'll be driven to do it is because of the on-demand factor, is that we've seen TiVo and video recorders or whatever there's been over the last 20 years, it still requires the planning on what you're going to watch at a future date, or the planning on the program or what you're going to record, etc. But the ability for the user to actually just sit there, and we've spent a lot of time on search, and on all our sites we've got a key search feature that allows you easy finding of content. But that's the ability, is that whatever you want to watch, just be able to type it in, set up the search, and then watch it. The device, I've just been watching the market, and there's like, all going well, there'll be a sub $100 device that'll allow you, I think the statistics are 46% of people that are on broadband at home are actually watching TV at the same time. But it'll be like a device that'll, you'll be able to watch something on your computer and just throw it to your TV and continue watching it. Now, our average users in the last year have gone, on any of our sites, have gone from 4 minutes and 30 seconds to over 30 minutes. So they're sitting on the web for over 30 minutes. The ability for them
is that per day? Is that per day?
Per session.
Per session.
Yeah,
so it could be multiple sessions per day.
But we've got like in most of the websites that you go on to, it could be multiple sessions, but I think it's
per day.
80-20. Okay. The big thing that we've got is we've got 10,000, 8 to 10,000 videos on most of these sites. It's not one or two things. You've got to give them enough content to watch whatever they want. But the ability to sit there and be able to bring something up on your computer or a playlist up on your computer in a really easy format where it's on demand, build the playlist, throw it to your TV, punch full screen and sit back is I think it's coming like a train. I think, towards the end of the year, and the devices will start to roll out. I think what we're seeing with Apple is just the start of it. Yeah. Very important point though, to do that, when everybody's thinking about putting video up, the quality that you put up, Vivian was saying about putting it up on the web, you've got to keep an eye on what formats you're putting it up on and the quality you're putting up on, because in order for it to be bearable to watch on your TV, you're going to have it at a certain standard that's higher than the average YouTube video, far higher than the average YouTube video.
That won't be hard. Keith, just when you think about from maybe more a technical perspective, this idea of these two worlds starting to come together, can the internet as a whole support this amount of activity? I mean, it's one thing to be having YouTube generating X 100 million videos at a minute or 2 minutes, but to Rob's point, what about when it's 30-minute sessions? Can the internet support this?
Right, or long form. I mean, I'm not to disparage the CDN community or anything else. I think that there's a lot of work to be done and a lot of opportunity. I've been an advocate for some time that the real way this stuff gets to scale and works, and there are challenges in different sorts of networks, is P2P or mesh, which will really deliver that. And you can do a lot with pre-populating content on devices in consumers' homes with their permission, so you can increase the viability of that instant access. A moment on the device thing, I think, realistically, this market's either going to belong to Apple for the foreseeable future, because we're back on this simple versus complex thing for a second. They have made the experience, because they own the devices and the storefront and the entire thing, simple, very elegant, well marketed. People get it, they can buy it, it works, it does what it's supposed to do. Everybody else is playing catch up, and I'm hopeful that that's going to accelerate, because the potential disruption to the revenue streams for a lot of large both consumer device and infrastructure companies could be monstrous, which is a good thing for consumers across the board and arguably not so bad for arms dealers like myself. But that's really, we're in the middle of this, and I've spent a lot of time on DRM panels with all kinds of people over the last couple of years, and we're struggling with trying to make this digestible at an experience level to the consumer and a business model they understand. We're not doing a very good job of it. These devices, if they're $100, better work really well, better do what they're supposed to do when they're turned on, not cause problems, and be integrated with the rest of the services extremely well. And that takes large companies, large investment, complicated technology, and a fair amount of forward thinking to make that work.
Can I describe an advice? You've got you plug something into a USB a wireless device into a USB into your computer. You've got another device that's plugged into one of your ports in the back of your TV. Instead of hitting DVD, you hit PC or source or one of the source buttons, and you're throwing from your PC the thing. That's simple.
It's easy to do with broadcasting. I'm not disputing you can route video. It's a lot more complicated if someone wants to keep it or take it someplace and move it around. What Apple's done with the mobile content window from a rights perspective is quite impressive. And they've done it very well, made it very simple. Behind the scenes, there's a lot of complicated technology and big investment.
Last thoughts on this convergence device, Greg? Have you guys thought at all about sort of how this world might unfold for you guys if you can get directly to the TV?
Well, I think there's a few players that are out there already. Obviously, TiVo is doing downloadable broadband content, so they're certainly bringing that content to the television. I think that AT&T is another interesting company for our entire discussion because they definitely have a 3-screen strategy. They definitely have an IPTV play. So there are a number of interesting players out there.
Okay, good. Let me turn it over to the audience now. There's a gentleman in the back that's had his hand up before, so why don't you go ahead. And please introduce yourselves before you ask your questions.
Sure, Will. I'm Frank. Hi.
Hi, Frank. Nice to meet you.
I'm Frank Chindama from Funnable Movies, and most of our panelists represent one or a few very, very well-known brands. RooTV is the kind of the exception to that. You represent a lot of professional brands over a lot of professional different websites. I've seen the delivery, the video quality is excellent. Is that the fact that you represent so many people, so many brands, so many websites, that sort of thing, is that a jump on the competition or is that a challenge?
Our view is that if it's not going to be a walled garden, we better be everywhere. So we want to make sure that we're on, we don't do the Times in New York, but we do the Times in London. So we want to make sure that anybody that, as this transition is starting to happen, make sure that we're behind the scenes on those particular websites. For a number of reasons. One is we can add value to the website because we can bring them in and incorporate them into search, but also the consistency of quality. When we're starting to talk about this TV, we're going to get ready for that. We're going to make sure that every one of our websites has the ability. We run most of the videos at the moment, so what's called 300K, about 300K, but we've got to make sure that we can bring it up to higher standards. One of the big issues that we see that everybody's going to have coming on, if this transition happens, you know, the bridging, is actually going to be Flash at the moment. A lot of people are sort of setting their sights on just Flash, and that the viewing experience isn't quite there in the TV environment at the moment. But our aim is just give everybody the tools to allow them to be able to do this and make the transition in a really simple end-to-end solution.
Other questions?
Alex Nestor, Digital Podcast. Question about, if I look at the music side of the world, you know, the MP3s are kind of, it's all going to come out unbundled, and everybody's making their own, essentially their own audio channel, if you will. You know, combination of podcasts, MP3s, you know, the album, you know, the brand means less as opposed to a specific individual piece of content, and my ability to create my own custom content channel. So if you look at video moving through that same, you know, as video starts to unbundle and consumers start to create, if you will, their own personalized video channels. You know, so I pick a piece of the New York Times, I pick a piece of CNN, I pick the pieces that I like, and I create my own channel, if you will. And I guess first, do you see that happening, the video, and you know, if so, what does it mean in terms of the changes in the way the media companies are going to have to focus? Today they're very focused on, you know, marketing their brands and their channels as opposed to particularly their individual pieces of content.
Who wants to take that one?
Well, I think it's happening already. It's happening through iTunes. People create their own playlists, which is certainly the first step to that. You know, that's a transition from the audio world. So there's there's certainly opportunities already to do that.
I think, again, always thinking about the customer, this is what, I agree, this is already happening, and this is what people want, and to ignore it and create, you know, and to create, maintain this walled garden is a huge mistake. And, you know, it's hard for big media companies who are used to controlling the method of distribution and the way people are, the order and the playlist, if you will, of content, to let that go, but you've got to. I mean, our dabbling in this now, and we'll do more and more of it, is the launch of our beta for My Times, which is a place where you can create right on our website your own sort of almost homepage with RSS feeds. I mean, if you want to create your My Times site and, you know, you're all the way across the top, I mean, I'm talking about text now, is RSS feeds from the Washington Post, the Wall Street Journal, the LA Times, you can do it. But we would rather you do that and stay on our site and do it, even though you're clicking back to those other sites, than go away. So I think our job is to enable the customers to consume media the way they want to.
Right, I think, but just to second that point, that the idea of big media companies kind of loosening themselves up to allow users to do stuff with their content that in the past would have been, you know, heretical, is a pretty key point. And actually one, I think, example that's pretty relevant to this point is, I don't know if anyone's been to the BravoTV.com website, but if you look at what they're doing with Project Runway, they've got a pretty interesting mashup going on there where users can basically grab lots of different clips, put them together, overlay a soundtrack, do different graphical transitions. And I thought, you know, that sort of example, you know, really typifies what I think we're going to be seeing a lot more of in the future. You know, to Vivian's point, is that big media companies gently sort of loosening the strings a little bit to allow users to engage more deeply. So, other questions over here?
So just to key on that, I think, you know, we're talking about the edge of the network creating a lot of content versus the center of the network creating a lot of content. How those two forces come together. Bravo TV, I think, is a great example. So for people who are producing high quality content, and see this great opportunity with UserGen, how do they come together? I mean, how do you loosen up the first strings and combine those two worlds?
Whatever the content is, if it's getting the views, it'll generate the advertising. If it's generating the advertising, it'll pay for itself. But it's got to be the content. You know, just about all our content providers, we pay on a CPM. So the more views they get, the more money they get, and they learn to tweak their content. And sometimes it's high production stuff, gets fantastic, enormous views, but it's got to pay for itself. You know, if it's getting the volume and the interest and the views and everything like that, then it should generate the revenue to pay for itself. What's happened with NBC in the last week when they've cut, you know, a number of their high dollar shows, serials, is just the same as how I'd say doing on the internet.
Yeah. You think of above and beyond what we talked about earlier around the bundling of user-generated content with commercially produced content, there's a series of complex things under the table too. I mean, if you look at what consumer demand is evidencing on the internet, it is user-generated content upstream and/or technologies like Slingbox, which test the model of fair use and push content upstream. So that creates some interesting challenges for the way networks have been deployed globally. You know, for one thing, we talk a lot about the bandwidth to get stuff down to consumers, which is the way most of them are built. We don't talk an awful lot about the problem of getting stuff up, which is a real issue for network operators. So there's got to be some changes that take place there. We're seeing this in some of the telecom providers. Maybe it's arguably easier for them to address this issue than cable networks. But it is a real problem, and something that, you know, again, where I referenced P2P earlier, while it's a great technology and is democratic and can help tell you what's popular, et cetera, it also creates fundamental problems at the infrastructure level that don't scale very easily today. So it's that notion of, as you said, on the edge of the network where the content's coming from, there are, again, forces under the covers at the technical level that have to start a sea change. And that won't happen until there's significant commercial models underlying at the same time. Today, but that's not to suggest that, I mean, again, that doesn't answer the Sling question of you know, location shifting of your consumption of content.
Let's do a couple more questions over here.
For those of you, Philip from Reels Channel, for those of you who have a presence on both
the online world and in either the print or broadcast world, how does your parent company or the companies that control both of you view the website of your business? Do they view it as an independent business model that needs to create and maintain its own revenue, or are you a promotional vehicle for your overarching brand?
Oh, good God, no. Sorry, can I just jump in? No, absolutely not. We're not. Our website does not exist to sell newspapers. That would be a huge mistake if you look at well-publicized trends in newspaper consumption. No, 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 not at all. In fact, we have.
Or if it is, you're failing at it.
Yeah, yeah. In fact, we recognizing that our chairman and publisher is well known to say that we must become platform agnostic, and of course, that's true. And we've taken many steps in order to make sure that we don't have some operation over here that's doing its own thing. We have to prepare to. We're in the business of journalism, not in the business of newspapers. So we've got to be wherever the consumer wants to consume journalism. So to that end, we've actually, in the last year alone, to your point, integrated our newsrooms and integrated our ad sales teams. And those have been monumental cultural shifts at the New York Times Company, but very, very critical ones that are already bearing fruit both in both of those arenas. I'll let my colleagues answer for theirs.
But yeah, for Showtime, it's actually started out as a marketing promotional vehicle for the network, and over the last 18 months now, we need to monetize it. So we're in a transition right now where we're kind of answering to two different kind of agendas, but we're definitely in a transition in that direction.
Yeah, I'd say likewise for us, we view it as both. We don't see it as mutually exclusive. CNN.com is a very large, profitable, dollar-generating business for us. At the same time, for TBS and TNT, they have taken some initial stabs at the online video effort as one that's largely promotional, but are increasingly looking at as a dollar-generating entity for them on its own.
Well, isn't Vivian now a competitor of Michael with CNN, where they weren't traditionally? I mean,
ask her now.
So you're going after their market share?
Yes.
One last question quickly, and then we'll wrap. Right.
Vivian, my name's Matt Byrne. Now that you are competing with CNN level, why, or I guess, how are you not generating video of your own when you're going to be competing?
Well, we are generating video of our own. We're producing about 30 to 40 pieces of original video a week. But we're doing it in a very different way. We would be foolhardy to try to compete with CNN in the sense of having a worldwide global news, having video bureaus with crews all over the world that CNN needs to fill their pipeline of networks, of course. So we're doing it in a different sort of way.
So you're not trying to start relationships with sources for video?
No, we figure that people are not coming to us to see footage of Bush's conference this morning at 10:30. They can find that elsewhere. What people come to us is for analysis and behind the scenes. People go to CNN. Look, I used to work for CNN. I have a lot of affection for CNN, but it's a very different. But what we're offering is something very different, and we feel complementary, which is not wall-to-wall news coverage, which CNN does very well, and they do analysis, but we're offering a very unique look at a very unique analysis and a very unique behind-the-scenes way of telling stories around the news.
I think that's it for time. Please join me in thanking our panelists.
Riveting.